Today we're going to be talking about application that we built for Hamad bin Khalifa University. Starting from the current circumstances, we had to come up with a solution to solve some of the common problems that were basically imposed by the pandemic situation. So the application is actually built and it is available on both the App Store and Google Play Store. It is published under the name of the Faith Space. This name might change in the future. However, for the time being, you can find it there by just typing the Faith Space. So we thought of active worshiping because most of the mosques were obviously closed, and then we had kind of to come up with a solution to cover that. So during this presentation, I would be giving you the overview of how the idea came up, and then how did we basically implement it, and then ship it to both iOS Apple Store and the Google Play Store. So, but before, let me give you a little introduction about myself. My name is Yunus Aitimo, and I work here at Hamad bin Khalifa University as a software engineer with some research background, and at the College of Science and Engineer. And I have been doing application development since my early age, so it's a field that I feel comfortable with. So this is basically the I would say the problematic that we wanted to face when we came up with this idea. So the first point is that streaming audio and video content from verified scholars is not basically popular yet, which means the applications that you have out there, they do not guarantee that broadcasters are verified basically scholars, which is this was one of our basically important points to cover. So we know that people who are broadcasting, they basically know what they're talking about. The second point is we wanted something that is simple to use, and then that cover as many user sections as possible, going from teenagers up to elderlies, and give them basically access to religious content. I would say verified religious content from anywhere basically where they are, and this can also include people with disabilities, like with COVID-19, for instance. We might consider that as a disability, but when you are quarantined, you cannot go out basically. So in order to maintain your faith, this could help you as a tool. And also this was great exercise in preparing for pandemic situations where worshippers can access religious content through the regular means. That means like going to the mosques, attending lectures, and whatnot. So, and also the bonus, I would say, of having such an application is that it gives us the ability to provide content in different languages. So people basically will access the religious content in whichever mother tongue they speak, basically. It also gives them ability to pick imams. I call them here imams, but in the app, they will be called scholars. So if they prefer, for instance, to follow one scholar, they can follow one scholar and then keep up with his broadcasting and follow his activities. And yes, so the solution we had to come up with, we called it the Faith Space. And it is basically a video over IP based application that streams a variety of religious contents. And that we call those content activities because they might be recitations, Quran recitations, for instance. They might be lectures and discussions and whatnot. And the application basically introduces what we call active grouped worshiping or active grouped virtual religious activities. So we call it active because the user basically will pick a mosque or a faith space, as we call it, and then can basically pick based on his or her personal preferences, and then basically keep worshiping in a sort of active way, in a sense where you're not anymore just sitting in front of I would say a TV, for instance, or a radio station, where you basically consume passively consume the contents that is being broadcasted. Here you might interact with scholars. You might be part of a group and things like that, which might motivate some people in keeping up their faith activities. Uh, Basically, any user can access a list of mosques. We call them mosques, but they are not placed for practicing prayer. They are placed for following up religious activities. They can join their preference activities, and then of course only authorized imams. So we are working with the Ministry of Awqaf to make sure that broadcasters are thoroughly verified scholars, basically, so they can have basically the ability to publish their content. I will be talking more about this, and I'll be repeating basically this mention because it is one of the key basically um, function and that we provide with the application. So we say feature as well. Yeah, it's a key feature. So the features, if I have to summarize them, the first task was to make it simple and intuitive in terms of user interface and user experience, um, and provide real-time video and audio streaming over IP. But when I mention here over time, we have to keep in mind that basically imams, after we spoke with couple imams and scholars, and they said that sometimes the video quality, for instance, is not what they prefer. They prefer to have like audio quality, especially when they do recitations of Quran. So they somehow they don't care if you don't see them well, but they do care if you don't hear them well. So we introduced what we call adaptive quality balancing, which means the scholar basically might pick whether uh, to to improve the audio quality over the video or vice versa. So here we can basically modify the way we broadcast based on the needs coming from the scholar. Then we provide also diverse content preference. So we can provide the same content and in different languages. We can provide different imams based on their location, based on their expertise, on their fields, different lecture topics. So users might also in a future version submit their preferred topics, and then the scholars might pick one of those topics and then basically build an activity based on that. So that gives people a lot of freedom in a sense where they can basically feel that they are part of the activity rather than just being a passive consumer. And once again, here I'm going to repeat myself again, but the imams that are broadcasting from our application are verified imams, and that is ensured by the Ministry of Awqaf, who basically they will give us the confirmation of they will activate basically the scholars based on their own data. So the impact that we were kind of aiming was, first of all, a significant impact within Qatar, in a sense where if we face again this sort of situations as this pandemic COVID-19 situation, we can basically have an alternative for religious activities than mosques, since you cannot be in mosques together. So then we provide a solution that can be definitely of great use and great benefits for the Muslim public. And we also aim for this to be a worldwide application in a sense where um, now the scholars from Education City, for instance, could broadcast not only to Qatar population, but they can also broaden their public by exposing their content to to other countries. And and the events and activities that happens within basically the mosque could be definitely accessible by the worldwide, which might increase significantly the visibility of Education City Mosque, for instance, as an example, worldwide. So the next slide will be a bit of technical, but I had to put it in just to show the workflow that we went through to implement basically this application. So when we first received the idea, and this could be one illustration of the webinars we gave earlier last week. So when we have an idea, we have to leverage basically the tools and then the resources that we can use to implement that idea. And then in this particular situation, the problem we had is that we had a very short amount of time. We had to release an application very quickly so that people can basically benefit of it given the current circumstances. So after leveraging the tools out there, we decided to go for the front end development. We decided to go with Flutter. Flutter basically is a framework that is provided by Google and gives you basically the possibility of writing your application in both iOS and Android on these two platforms, and that by keeping only one single code base, so the maintainability was basically was improved. So by doing that, by picking only one front end instead of going with native, we still are getting native basic applications, but we reduce the time needed for implementation um, um, and respects our number one criteria, which is fast deliverable. So then we had a choice between either going serverless or implementing our own backend. So for that, we had basically to go with the split. I would say we had to implement our own backend since we're using advanced, basically, I would say features such as sockets are used for real-time messaging. We also are using video streaming, so we just want to make sure we keep control on the application and the streams and broadcasts that basically go through our pipeline. And 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 for the serverless, we had basically to kind of use some of the serverless kind of features since we didn't have time to implement a fully fledged basically backend application on our own. So we decided to use like user authentication and then verification. So we basically handed that over to a serverless application, so to speed up the development process. And and this basically shows, as I said earlier, it's a perfect illustration of the previous webinars that talk about how to effectively implement a mobile application under some circumstances. So here we had the time limit imposed by the pandemic situation, and then we had the idea. So the thing was how to make it as quick as possible to the market, yet respect quality standards that are out there. And so as for a demonstration of how the application basically works, um, first of all, whenever you download the application, you are basically logged in by default as a consumer, basically as a user. So, and you see the list of available activities, I would say, or available masks. Since these are virtual masks, but it is important to mention that masks does not mean that you basically are praying, because virtual prayer, we do not ensure that in the application. So what we ensure, as I said earlier, is just activities like lectures, recitations, and discussions and things like that. So as I said, the application does not require user authentication as public, as consumer, and then shows the list of available masks. The masks are owned basically by scholars. Each scholar will have only one mask, and he will basically maintain that mask. Publish activities, we will say that in later slides. Publish activities and then see who's attending and things like that. So from the user's perspective, the worshippers are attendees, if I might. Um, so to improve the immersive aspects, we had to include some elements within our application. So the first one is basically we give you the timing of the activity, when it's going to start. And then there's also a countdown that helps you out basically track how much time is left to before starting the activity. And the countdown is important for when the activity is already published and then the scholar is already basically broadcasting, so you will know basically what have you missed. And that is set by the scholar. The timeline here is set by the scholar. The countdown is basically automatic. And then you will see here the scholar's name and the type. So for the time being, the type is only scholar, but in the future we might include different types, such as um, like specialists. If we have, if the person is doing research studies, or if he's a faculty in some research departments, and he has specialty in a given topic, he might inform that in there. And and then the type of the activity itself. So we have the title, and this is set by the scholar. It can be either in Arabic or in English, and also you can see who's attending, how many people are attending in this activity, and then um, uh, are joining basically the activity. And then you basically hit tap join, and then once you do that, you get into live broadcasting. So you will see the scholar broadcasting a live activity, and and the broadcasting is one-way broadcasting. So you have the scholar speaking, and then as per the users, they do not basically have ability to to speak nor to broadcast to stream any videos, to broadcast any videos. In the upcoming version, we will open up that option of having a two ways broadcast streaming. So the broadcaster and the streamer, the person who's viewing, who can basically interact. Um, and yes, so this is basically, this works out basically the view of the consumer. As a worshipper, this is what you see. You have only basically it's three pages, and we wanted to make it as simple as this. We did not want to overwhelm it with the too many options and too many. Maybe in the future we'll have some complementary options, but for the time being, we want to make it as simple as possible to hit the spot, which is the objective is get into the activity, to the worshiping activity as quick as possible. And as per the scholars, so the view that is exposed to scholars is a bit different, in a sense where where they basically they have to log in, and login means that the imams, they need to be I would say qualified somehow. So and that is ensured by the Ministry of Awqaf, and this is our future collaboration with the Ministry of Awqaf, and and they will basically tell us who is not basically eligible for being a scholar. And and so what they can do is they can set their starting time. So here they can basically say the activity will start like today at 11 a.m. And then they can set also the activity type. and and they can see how many people are joining. For the time being, we did not include the limit of how many people can join, but in the upcoming versions, we will definitely provide that option to scholars if they, for some reason, prefer to kind of limit the number of attendees. And uh, and then, of course, the scholar can open the floor for questions, and this is coming as well in the in the next in the next version of the application. So if I might go back to the um, worshippers view. So the worshippers view, as you can see here, it sees basically whatever the scholar is broadcasting. And this is the point of our application, is to make it as simple as possible, yet efficient. And we had to keep the same view, and this was the challenge actually. We had to keep the same view for the scholar. So there is no windows like a new page for setting the content of the activity. Basically, the scholar sees exactly copy paste of the of the user's basically view. So they both are on the same on the same page. And once again, I'm going to go back to this slide to show you what was basically implemented between the two. So when you are a consumer or of the application, like you are a worshipper, you basically do not access any authentication and authorization process. And this was made, we purposely did this so we can split the services into sections. So this service here ensures that if you want to change later on the platform on which we built this application, and we might move it to a different platform sometime soon, so we don't have to worry about taking care of the authentication and authorization of the imams, and vice versa. If you wanted to move the authentication and authorization of the imams to a different platform or service, we don't have to worry about the worshippers, basically the processing backend, as we call it. So this is important to split between the two, so we can kind of have two independent system in one, basically. And I think that wraps it for me. And then I made it purposely short so we can have more questions if any. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and then please feel free to ask any questions if you have. Okay, I see that we got some questions here. Will this be an open source product? That is a good question. It is a great question. Open source means you might want to participate in implementing it. If that is your true question, then please keep in touch. We can definitely see how we can do that. But open source, it might not be open source since we have built the whole thing in-house, and then we think, I don't know yet if we can turn it into an open source, but security-wise, we implemented some encryptions in there, and then we don't want to expose that. However, there are some components that might definitely be open source, but honestly speaking, we didn't think about open sourcing it. And since this might be the Ministry of Awqaf's property, maybe, so we don't want to go that way. But if the question is, do you want people to participate in it? That answer is definitely yes. But open source, I will push for open source definitely to make it open source, so we can basically benefit from the community's development potential. Definitely yes. The Google Play Store. Yeah, I have a question. When should we expect the application on the Google Play Store? It is already on the Google Play Store. The thing is, you can download it and then you can have it. For the time being, we are kind of limiting access to it because, as I said again, we have a discussion with the Ministry of Awqaf to make sure we kind of validate the scholars who are accessing it. And uh, also, yes, not to have like polluted content in there. That is why for the time being, we're kind of limiting the access to the application. But you can go in there, and then you can definitely check it out, like how it looks and things like that. But sometime soon is we're going to release a new application. We're working on that right now. That includes much more kind of content. Yes. Can we use the whole setup for our own private use? Yes, yes, yes. The upcoming version actually includes a private section, which basically what you're gonna do is, uh, instead of broadcasting to everyone, what you're gonna do is you can open a private room or private activity. I don't want to call it private mosque. It doesn't sound good, but private activity room, and then you basically give access to peoples who basically you prefer. I mean, you select who basically is going to access the room. Definitely, yeah, this is coming up in the near future version. I'm working on that right now, actually. Provide the name. Oh yes, for the app, for the Google Play, I will definitely help you out with that. Um, just give me 1 minute. I will give you the access to the Google Play. Yeah. So now you can see uh, it's here. This is the Fate Space, which is a product from Hamad bin Khalifa University. And then you can also have this is second app that we released from Hamad bin Khalifa University as well. So when you type in Hamad bin Khalifa University on the Google Play, if it's check marks here, it means we are basically the publisher. So when you get into uh, the web page, you see basically the view that I just explained. I just exposed to you guys. Yes. So yeah, this is the link for the application. Yeah. But once again, once you get the application, it is going to be you're going to see most likely you're going to see empty activities list because the scholars are the one basically controlling the applications. Whenever they have basically any content, they will provide it. But if you don't provide any content, well, you won't be able to access the content. Yes. Just keep in mind that this is going to evolve very quickly and very much. I would say we did not do any kind of how to call that, any marketing around this or whatnot. But once it's mature enough, and then we have enough backup from the Ministry of Awqaf, then definitely we will do some marketing about it and go through the whole thing because all those kind of tweaks and stuff like that will definitely correct all of that. Thank you very much, guys, for your presence.